This is Kim Graff. I'm just going to talk about how TBIs may relate to some educational issues that your students may have in the future. Um, I was in a car accident in 2010 when I was 23, and that kind of stunted a little bit of my ability to process emotions, to process memory, to process language skills, and I did mention memory. See, um, so I was hit head on in a vehicle at 60 miles an hour, and I ended up breaking my face and my skull and my back and my ribs and a couple other things. And since then, it's been really difficult for me to um, kind of differentiate between what was part of me before and what was part of me now. So that's probably one of the scariest things about someone who has a traumatic brain injury is they can't tell where their new self kind of begins post brain injury. I've also explained it kind of like wandering in the dark and you can't find the trees because you don't know exactly what is injury and what was you from before the accident. So that's something to keep in mind. Another thing that I have is I have a lot of headaches. I get a lot of headaches if I'm doing something for too long, if I'm trying to focus on something for too long, including movies. I have a hard time focusing on things. Some of your students who have had TBIs might have issues just paying attention without moving. Kind of the whole sitting still and focusing on something for very long doesn't really work. Your brain kind of just empties out at some point. Judgment. I don't have too much judgment. My issues have been trying to regulate emotions. So when I have a strong emotion, it's hard for me to pull that emotion back and make it kind of think through it. So a lot of times I try and like right now I'm trying to just be mindful, always stay in the moment, don't think ahead, don't let things become too emotional and too personal, I guess. So that's one thing to keep in mind is that a lot of kids with TBI might have issues just regulating how they feel and how it comes out and how it's displayed. I mentioned concentration, reasoning. It's kind of another thing. Problem solving, even in a linear fashion. Math problems were hard before; they're harder now. It's just that whole your brain doesn't work as fast as it needs to, and it just kind of you're kind of left with a blank. Decision making, like I said, sometimes that gets wrapped up in emotions. You can't regulate how you feel about a decision and what should happen. So it's hard for you to kind of see the outcome of your decisions like I used to. Completing tasks, that kind of goes with memory too. Like because I have a hard time remembering things, I have to write things down a lot. And I kind of have to have everything. If I'm doing something, I have to see it to its end. Otherwise, I won't. If I'm trying to get in the middle of a project, it's hard. Difficulty with speech. Sometimes I stutter. Sometimes I cannot even recall language, especially when I'm tired. It's called mental exhaustion. It's another thing that kind of happens. I kind of lose the ability to think, I guess, like write or talk or come up with words or come up with coherent thoughts. Turn taking. I, social cues is one thing I do have issue with. I sometimes cannot tell like nuances, like if you're being sarcastic or if you're being, um, yeah, just any sort of little nuancy things in conversation can be kind of difficult. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's something you definitely have to pay attention with your kids, and it's called the invisible injury for a reason. You cannot see it by looking at me, but it affects your kids, and it could look like a behavioral issue, or just it can look like ADD. It can look like um, just disinterest, and that could be not at all what's going on. So I just thought I'd add that little anecdote.